Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is video 2 of the Fender wide range comparison video that I did that compares 5 different Fender wide range humbuckers that they've done over the years. If you missed that video, the link is in the description and I compared these 5 pickups you see here. So what I wanted to do with this video is to first give you my thoughts on last week's comparison. I really wanted to give myself a week to kind of digest some of the clips that I made, because I can't say this enough, there's a huge difference between recording the clips and playing the pickups and then listening back to them all together. So in some ways, I'm really in the same boat you are when I'm hearing these pickups, because I really get my own bias as far as what I like when I'm playing the pickups. And a lot of times that bias is kind of turned on its head when I actually hear them back. The second thing I wanted to do with this video is to talk about some of the attributes of particularly the Vintera, the Mexican-made 2014, and the Squier wide range pickups. They have a few things about them that I really thought was very cool, and it's really something to consider if you're looking to get into wide range pickups and you're not necessarily convinced that you need to go with the CuNiFe, the 2020 or the vintage. Which reminds me to say that my point in doing all these pickup comparisons is not to find like the best of whatever pickup we're looking at, but to hear the differences and see what my preference is. First of all, that's the main reason I'm doing this, but I've found through talking to a lot of you that everybody has really different preferences, and what I hear in these pickups is somewhat different as to what other people would hear in them and prefer in these pickups. So as always, if you like this kind of thing, do the like, comment, subscribe thing. It means a lot to me when people comment and we get to talk about pickups. Obviously, I'm kind of a pickup nerd and I love this stuff, so let's talk about it. So my thoughts on last week's pickups. I, at this point, am keeping the actual vintage 70s CuNiFe in the neck position of this Deluxe and a 2020 CuNiFe in the bridge. I really love the combination of these two, especially in the middle position. The neck position is just a little mellower than the neck position that comes with the 2020 CuNiFe set, which I have in this 1960s K hollow body guitar. Just put this in the neck position. I just have one volume on it with a 1 meg pot, and this is a really cool sounding guitar. If you want to hear what this thing sounds like, what a wide range sounds like in a hollow body, that link is down below in the description as well. So let's go down the list and just really briefly talk about the obvious differences between the CuNiFe pickups and some of the older reissues that they've done of the wide range pickups. So this is the Vintera pickup. We're just going to use this to kind of demo and talk about wide ranges in general. But if this were a CuNiFe, each one of these pole pieces, and the pole pieces you can see on the back of the pickup, all of these pole pieces would actually be the magnets in the pickup. So they don't have the bar magnet that goes underneath the coils like a normal humbucker would have. So again, like actual pole piece magnets like you would have like in a Strat pickup or a Tele pickup. That is for the CuNiFe. So that gives the pickup a certain amount of snap, and there's a certain quality to the transient that's just a little bit more robust than you would get on this type. So when you have like the Vintera and the Mexican made and the Squier, all of these pole pieces here are basically just steel poles. They help to sense the magnetic field of the strings, and they help to kind of focus that per the strings, which is why they're placed underneath the strings, but they are not magnets themselves. The magnets in these pickups are underneath the coils. So that, by and large, is the biggest difference that you'll find with these pickups. I haven't cracked these open and taken a look to see what else is going on, but I guess the bobbin size and the coil size and apparently some kind of reflector plate that's in there that might act kind of like the plate on a Tele bridge pickup might act. I'm not sure. I don't build pickups yet, but it's really interesting to read about the differences that might be between these and the originals. I haven't listed these to sell yet. There's a possibility I might crack them open and just see what else is going on in there. If I do, of course, I will post that video. So while I have this one, let's talk about the Vintera. So the Vintera pickup, it was really surprising in how bright this pickup actually was. I think people had complained about how dark and muddy the Mexican made and the Squier made, and pretty much all the iterations before the Vintera came out, people were complaining about how dark those pickups sounded. So they really went for it with this pickup, and I should mention that I was using 1 meg pots, at least a 1 meg volume pot, and then a 500K tone pot. Everything was all up on the guitar. So with that setup, these were actually a little too bright for me, even the neck. If I were to use these, I might go with a 500K pot, and after digging around a little bit, I found that they actually use 250K pots for these Vintera pickups, at least in the Vintera thin lines, 250K pots. So that's really interesting because typically for a humbucker, you use at least 500. And for the wide ranges, typically you would find 1 meg pots in there, and I found those to really work nicely. So I kind of started with a baseline distance from the strings for each pickup, and then I just tweaked it a little bit to try to find the sweet spot, and I experimented a little bit to see like if I got it really close, what would it do, and if I got it really far away, what would it do? Because in the CuNiFe, in both the vintage and the 2020, if you get those things really backed off from the strings, they lose more bass than they do treble. So if you're looking to get a less boomy neck out of the CuNiFes, and there still is a good amount of low end in there. So if you back those off from the strings, you still retain a good amount of treble, but you kind of lose some of the bass. So you get the best of both worlds there. So, and likewise, if you're looking to get more bass, if you really bring it closer, it doesn't really enhance the treble that much, but you really get a robust low. And I think the mids are boosted a little bit when you bring it closer. So you kind of have a range of different sounds you can get with the distance from the strings. With the Vintera, the really interesting thing was, as I installed them, I was like, ooh, they're really bright. Maybe I'll bring them a little closer and see if I can get them to have some more lows. I brought them closer and they got brighter. It was a really strange thing. So I don't know if you can tell in the video, but the Vintera actually were a little closer to the strings than some of the other pickups, just to see if I could get them to sound like all the CuNiFes, because understandably that's what they're kind of going for. As far as the comparison of how I felt playing the pickup versus how it sounded the week after I did the comparison, the Vintera was actually very much spot on. I think the brightness that I felt while I was playing it was pretty much what I experienced on the back end when I was kind of editing it all together and listening to it after the fact. So the dynamics that I put into the Vintera and the way that I would play it to try to get the sounds out, it was a fairly easy pickup for me to play, and I didn't feel like my hand had to translate what I wanted to do in order for it to work with the pickup. It was a very responsive pickup in a way that made sense to me. So to contrast that, the Squier, the first thing I noticed about the Squier was the neck pickup was just a mud monster. It really just had way too much low, and I was having a lot of trouble getting the clarity out of it. And if I backed it off from the strings to get that mud to go away, it just kind of lost all definition and it was kind of weak sounding. So I ended up putting it kind of like around halfway where I would like it, just to try to get the articulation I wanted out of it. And at that point still, I really struggled with this pickup as I was playing it. I did not enjoy the neck pickup from the Squier at all to play it. The bridge pickup was a little bit different story. That beefiness of the Squiers worked pretty well in the bridge position, because bridge position wide range humbuckers, even the CuNiFes, can be a little bit harsh. You have to tame a little bit with the tone knob, and sometimes the way you play. I really like them played with fingers much more than a pick. But yeah, so that Squier bridge, it did have some good qualities playing it, but I really struggled with these pickups because I feel like the pickups that I like, when I'm playing them softly, they kind of have a mellow treble. And then as I start playing a little bit harder, or playing with a pick and really digging in, the treble comes out and you get a little bit of, you get a lot of response out of the pickup, and it changes in the EQ as it kind of goes through that different dynamic range. So the Squier, it really was like when you were playing softly, it was just kind of muddy and soft. And then if you started playing harder, it just kind of got louder, and it didn't really, the EQ didn't change in like a musical way. I know that's a very subjective term, but what I mean by that is when you put more into it, the EQ spectrum changes in a pleasant way. The EQ spectrum didn't really change that much, and it was not pleasant. But in the bridge, it kind of worked as I was playing it. I still kind of struggled with it. The middle position was interesting on the Squier because it sort of really dropped in volume. I'm not sure why, but the other pickups tended to keep a good amount of volume in the middle position, but the Squier just really dropped out a good bit. So then the comparison of, did this pickup feel different to play versus how it sounded? And yes and no. I think as as much as I struggled with the pickup to get it to sound the way I wanted it to, when I listened back, it sounded pretty okay. I mean, there are certain things that I didn't think sounded good on the back end, but it certainly wasn't as bad as I expected it to be when I listened back. And the bridge especially, I was very impressed with the bridge as I listened back. So it might be kind of fun to pair like a Squier with a Squier bridge with a Vintera neck, because you get that brightness out of the neck. You could get some beefy sounds out of the bridge, and that might be kind of fun to check out. So the Mexican-made 2014s, this was also really surprising, but for totally different reasons. They were the first ones that I tried from like the non-CuNiFe pickups. And when I recorded, because I would kind of just pop them in the guitar and then I would instantly go and record and compare how they sounded against the CuNiFe recordings. And I was shocked at how similar they actually sounded to the CuNiFes. And, you know, disclaimer, they don't sound exactly like them. But when all is said and done, I think the Mexican-made 2014 sounds the most like the CuNiFes out of all of these. That comes with a caveat, though. While they did their best job at mimicking the CuNiFes in these Mexican-made pickups, the differences that were there really revealed a worse-sounding pickup. It was like one of those pictures of somebody where they swap the nose out, and it just, there's something really wrong with it, or like the eyes are upside down, and it looked like the person, but it just sounded kind of bad. That's what I kind of thought with these. It was like they really kind of nailed the EQ curve of it to some degree, but it was just, whenever I listened back, there was always something kind of raunchy in the mids where like they were trying to really get that EQ curve and they sort of got it, but it was just kind of wrong in some weird like Frankenstein way. That being said, I think they've sounded better than I actually thought they would. I really kind of thought that reviewing the Made in Mexico, the Squier, and the Vintera, which I know are made in Mexico, but it's easier to call these the Made in Mexico. I really kind of thought that those three pickups were just going to sound awful and this was going to be kind of a funny video to make, and it really wasn't. I think these are viable options if you're looking for a certain sound. And the comparison between playing these and then listening back, with how similar I thought they felt to the actual wide range, I thought that they were going to do better to my ears in the final comparisons, and I think they kind of fell short. So the difference between playing the Made in Mexico and then listening back later, it was about the same, except I really was surprised that with the similarity to the CuNiFe, that there would be that raunchiness in the mid-range that I didn't like. So I think they did a little better playing than they did listening back. So I think my overall favorite in these was the Vintera, and then the Squier and the Made in Mexico. I guess the Made in Mexico fared a little better than the Squier, but if I had to choose and I didn't have the Vintera, I would probably take a Squier bridge and a Made in Mexico neck and put those together as a set. So let's get into the other reason I wanted to make this video, and that was to talk about something really cool about the Squier, Made in Mexico, and Vintera pickups. So this is the Squier, and if we look at the back of this pickup, you can see that the wires are connected to these terminals, which basically means that you can totally rewire this pickup the way you want to. I just thought that was so cool. I had never realized it before. I think I'd seen pictures, but I hadn't really thought about it. And so it really occurred to me when I got the Squiers, and the guy who sold them to me had totally removed the leads from the back of the pickup. And I got them out, and I was like, there are no wires on this pickup, so I'm going to have to figure out how to do this, which I'd never really wired up a pickup from scratch like this before, because usually you'd have to take the cover off, take the pickup apart, really carefully take a look at the copper leads and like solder stuff. It would be a total mess. But they have actual terminals on the back of these pickups that you can solder your own configuration if you want. So for this pickup, I ordered some 5-way for this, and it actually just came, but this was just some old pickup lead that I had found on another Fender made in Mexico. So this was from like an actual single coil. So it's a 2-conductor, and that's all I really wanted because I wasn't splitting these pickups at all. So I looked up some diagrams online and checked out the Made in Mexico that I had, and I just did the jumper between the 2 coils, and then I had the 2 wires coming from it, and then you basically need to solder the ground to this part of the chassis right there. So that gave me a really solid 2-conductor lead on this thing. So before I sell it, I'm going to solder together a 5-way connector on this so somebody can split this pickup if they wanted to. So I thought I might as well do that on camera, and you can see what it's like to rewire one of these pickups yourself. So the other thing I wanted to mention about these Vinteras that's really cool before we get into the soldering is because they're voiced to sound good with 250K pots, which is what Fender uses with them, I think that gives you a lot of freedom as to what you might want to do with these pickups. If you wanted to pair them with a Tele bridge but only have one volume pot, I kind of suspect it might work really well, a lot better than it would with a really strong sounding wide range pickup. And because they're kind of lower output, I think that also lends itself well to having a lot of different combinations that might work with different, even humbuckers, if you wanted to put this in the neck. And because you have access to all the terminals on the back, you can do all kinds of fun things with like parallel wiring on this, or just coil tapping them, anything you want. You can just really do a lot with this pickup. It's a really versatile thing that Fender designed, and I think it was a really smart move on their part because, I mean, they don't want to have to make different wide ranges for their customs versus their Tele Deluxes. So if you've done some cool things with this pickup and gotten creative with installs, let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to see what people have done with these, and let's just get into some soldering. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just remove these leads from the terminals. This is the 2 conductor that I used on the pickup for the video comparisons, but I'm going to wire it up with 5 conductor before I sell these again. One thing I found is you don't want to let the soldering iron on the terminals for too long because I think they're seated in plastic and they will actually move a little bit if you leave them on there for too long. And we'll take off the ground wire. And then this jumper, just take this guy off too. Okay, so there's our terminals that we're going to solder to. And of course, you just want to tin your wires first. So the thing I did not do when I wired this up for the comparison is I didn't run this under here. I just did a really quick job because I knew it was going to be in the guitar such a short amount of time. So I'm going to run, I think I'm going to run it through like this, if it will fit. Not quite. There we go. Okay, so that's easy enough. You can kind of run all your cabling underneath it and then pull it up. And then once I have this, the ground wire is going to go to the casing, and then I have enough space to get these. You kind of have to measure out, and these will go there and to all the spots. So we're going to do one more tinning of the ground wire just closer to where the casing's going to be. And then I'll trim that ground wire. Okay, so first I'm gonna get this ground onto the casing. It was easy enough to Google some images of what you want to do with these leads. We basically just want a green wire going over to the left here, and then a black wire going over to, let's see if I can get this to, that's good. Black wire going to the right side on the bottom. So I'm going to tin this terminal just a little bit, really quick. Don't want to get the heat on there too much. Might hit it with a tiny bit of solder. That's pretty nice. We're going to do the same with the black here. That looks great. Now I'm going to cut the red and white leads a little bit so they're not coming around so far. And I'll quickly tin these wires. And the white is going to go over here. I'm just going to wrap that black lead around the... probably should have done the white ones first, but I don't think it'll melt it. Famous last words. So, quickly just... get that nice and tinned. I'm going to keep the black lead in there so it's not... do this with some pliers. So it doesn't come out. So these are a little tougher to do because you really have to keep them in position. I think I got it. Yeah, it's good. Cool. And then the black wire is more secured that way. So we're going to do the same thing with the red. This red needs to be tinned just a little bit more. I'm going to tape that green wire down so it doesn't get in the way while I'm soldering. Maybe stamp these down a little bit. Clamp it just a tiny bit. Okay, and that's the Squier Wide Range wired with 5 conductor. Okay, so I almost forgot to check the pickup, and so let's test it out here. Awesome, that checks out. Cool. All right, that's all I've got for today. So thank you so much for watching, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say about these wide ranges. And next week should be the PRS 5815 LTs versus the Lawler Imperials, which I've been playing both for a while, and it's really kind of down to the wire with these 2 sets of pickups. So I'm excited for you to hear that, and I'll see you next week. Bye.